What's going on, guys? This is the Leafs Convo podcast. It is September 5th, 2019. I'm Norman James in London, Ontario, joined by my podcast partner in crime, Mike Augello. Mr. A, long time no talk. How are you?
Hey, Norman. I'm well and getting geared up for some prospect tournaments in Buffalo. I'm not making my way to Traverse City because it's a rather lengthy trek to northern Michigan, but I'll be eyeing the Leafs prospect tournament this weekend, and then training camp opens next Thursday, and that's when the fun starts.
Yeah, great talking to you again, my friend. The Wings and the Leafs hooking up for a kids showcase is unique.
Yeah, it's weird because the Leafs, as you know, have been in hosted rookie tournaments in London. They were part of a rookie tournament that they hosted in Toronto a couple of years ago. They were in Laval with the Senators and the Habs this year. This is a new thing. Now they're part of this eight-team round robin tournament with the Wings and Columbus and St. Louis and Chicago and a number of other teams. So it's going to be a different experience, and it's going to be nice to see them against some different teams. But it was nice to go to the tournament and see them see the players up front. And more than likely there aren't going to be any players who play for the Leafs in this challenge that are going to be on the roster this year. But it's good to get a look at them going forward and see how far they might be from being in the NHL.
It makes sense, though. Send the rookies and the futures off to do their thing in a foreign area during this period, because it's not as if the star of early October, who was recently drafted, is going to shine in one of these tournaments, Mike, because the Maple Leafs are at a point right now where they're not getting top picks. And I'm not saying these cats aren't going to be able to play their way into high value at some point in the near future. But if you're having one of these camps in London or Kitchener or somewhere near the GTA, and you've got the first overall pick, the Matthews, the Marners, the Nylanders and stuff like that, it makes a lot more sense. Kind of not out of sight, out of mind, but it is sort of appropriate geographically for where the Leafs are on the pecking order of the NHL right now, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. And the roster that is going to Traverse City is sort of reflective of that. Rasmus Sandin, who a lot of people think has a chance to make the Leafs roster on the bottom pairing, along with Timothy Liljegren. They're not at the rookie tournament.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
They've played, Liljegren's played 2 years in the AHL. Sandin has played a year. Jeremy Bracco it would have been his fifth, I believe. It doesn't really do them any good to be there because they've sort of been there, done that. Now, Nick Robertson, the kid that the Leafs drafted in the second round, who put on a show at the summer showcase for Team USA, he's going to be there. One of the players I was interested in seeing was Joseph Wall, one of their top goaltending prospects, but the Leafs reported this morning that he's not going to play in the rookie tournament because he broke a finger. So that would probably set him back at least a few weeks. It may maybe prevent him from, starting the season, although you don't know how long it'll take for a broken finger. So there are a few setbacks, but still there will be players to take a look at and see how far they've come.
The chains have to keep on moving, Mike, regardless of what's happening with the big club. Mitch Marner, rumblings, chatter, innuendo, rumors out there in the ether having to do with a bridge deal. I'm fine with it as long as it gets this kid into camp and gets him into the right headspace, and his contribution to the team leads to greater success than what we saw last year. But, you and I, in talking over Facebook Messenger, great tool, by the way. Thank God for it. It's free. We're not necessarily on the same page when discussing, the average annual value of any sort of bridge deal that might be signed, Mike. Anything 9+, you're not down with. for me, I'm almost at the point now where I want the kid to sign for whatever amount just to get it over with. And we know Kyle Dubas has capitulated in the past and kind of laid down his sword in order to honor the demands of other players. So why not do it in this case too?
Well, because it has ramifications going forward. I mean, the capitulation, as you said, with William Nylander. I mean, now it's 6.9 million compared to some other contracts that have been signed. It looks fairly reasonable. The problem is that there was a $10+ million salary on the first year. He didn't perform. Now they expect him to perform this year. And they're going to need him to perform, especially if Marner does not get into camp next week. Now, you see, there has to be a benefit on both sides for a bridge deal to work. The 3-year bridge deal gets Marner closer to unfettered, unrestricted free agency. He's 4 years away from that. So if you bring him to the brink of that, there's the corresponding benefit to the Leafs should be he doesn't get the big salary. He's not going to get $11 million like Matthews or Tavares. Well, in this instance, if he's getting 9.5 or 9 on a 3-year bridge deal, that's double the amount that Nikita Kucherov got on the most expensive bridge deal in the history of the league a few years ago. So, I mean, I honestly, I don't, Dubas doesn't have any problem setting precedents, and I don't think he should worry about that. But I also think that there has to be a benefit for the Leafs if they sign him to that bridge deal, and that means a salary significantly lower than 9.5. I think it has to be in the 7.5 to 8 range for it to make any sense to them.
Does Camp Marner want to be a part of the Maple Leafs this year for anything less than what they think he is worth?
Well, I mean that's the question. I mean, we know that Marner and Marner's camp, that we know he wants to be in Toronto. If that is not the case, then I think some of the stances that they've taken don't make any sense. I think he wants to be in Toronto. I think he wants to be part of this team long term, but he also wants to get paid. And I understand that, but the problem is that you've paid Tavares, you've paid Matthews. Marner has led the team in scoring the last couple of years. He deserves to be paid, but again, he's a winger as opposed to a center. Darren Ferris and Paul Marner don't care about that, but the Maple Leafs have to because, next year they may want to re-sign Jake Muzzin. They may want to re-sign Tyson Barrie. And how can they do that if they have 3 players over $10 million and 9.5 is basically 10? It's $500,000 less. I think you need to get him at a little lower of an amount for it to make sense to Toronto.
You could understand where Marner's people have an issue with their client taking a bit of a haircut, taking one for the team, as the team mathematically tries to, weigh things out and plan for the future. I get that. But you also know that Marner's people want their client to be the hero of any situation going forward when it comes to the success that this team might be able to put together. So in order for that to happen, Mike, the Leafs have to have resources. The Leafs have to have the capability to go out and augment the group, improve the group, strengthen the group. So when all the cards are on the table in these meetings between Dubas and Ferris, I mean, I'd love to be a fly on the wall to hear what this conversation is like. Where does Ferris think Dubas is going to come up with the extra ducats to support number 16 in his drive in, leading the Maple Leafs to a Stanley Cup? I get it from both sides here, Mike, but that we're getting down to the last few hours before anxiety time starts to kick in.
Yeah, I mean, from their point of view, Darren Ferris and Mitch Marner and Paul Marner are probably not concerned about, the amount of cap room that Kyle Dubas has to work with. I mean, their aims and their direction is more selfish. And I'm not saying selfish in a bad sense. I'm saying they have to be because they're concerned about Mitch Marner and what he's going to make and how long of a contract. And, the point of view specifically focused on him. He doesn't have to be concerned about that. That's the concern of Kyle Dubas and the Maple Leafs. And that's why I look at the stance of the Maple Leafs, and they're saying, we love Mitch, we want him part of this group, but he has to, fit into the construct of this team. And if you have Austin Matthews at 11.6 and Mitch Marner at 9.5 and Tavares at 11, you're talking about, over $31 million for three players. And an $81.5 million cap doesn't leave room for much else. And that's a
Man.
problem. I mean, Marner may be taken care of for a few years with that deal if it does come to fruition. But then next year, you're going to have to probably trade off a couple players to make room because they won't have that $10.5 million extra for the contracts of Nathan Horton and David Clarkson going on long-term injury. There's going to be a squeeze, and that's why I think they have to find avenues of saving money and maybe moving players out, and that's going to probably be next year or next summer. But they also have to get tougher on negotiations, and maybe they should have been a little tougher on Matthews, and they definitely should have been a little tougher on Nylander, but I think they have to be on Mitch Marner, and I don't know if that's going to happen, but I think they should be tougher, and we'll see if they are.
Yeah, and if they are tougher and they hold the line, Mitch Marner does not start the season with the Maple Leafs in training camp, certainly not the first part of the regular season. And then Kyle Dubas has another cloud hanging over his early tenure as general manager of the Maple Leafs. He had one last year with Nylander not being around. The team was doing really well. Nylander finally shows up. The team did okay, but certainly didn't play at the same pace they did prior to Nylander being there. Was that because Nylander joined the team and made the team worse? Technically, no. You just had a feeling that he wasn't going to make the team excel any better than it was prior to him arriving. He became an extra guy who couldn't find his way, and the Leafs didn't need another passenger. What I'm getting at is Kyle Dubas is setting himself up to be in that same situation where Nylander could be the guy who's humming on all cylinders. Marner shows up in November. Is he going to be ready to go? Is he going to compound the team's success and make it better, or is he going to dial the team back a little bit? And then, in general, how many years is this going to go on for? Next year, Dubas is going to have issues with Jake Muzzin. Is it going to be with Tyson Barrie? Is there going to be other players that are going to have these problems? And it's not as if it's Dubas's fault when you break it down to brass tacks. But, one contractual issue after another, season after season. I'd like to see Kyle Dubas be able to oversee a group of players who are in unison and all fighting for the same thing, and that's to maximize their youth and win a damn Stanley Cup. But then pro sports, Mike, pro sports. A few more minutes. I don't know if you want to address anything more on this topic. Certainly OGs, converts, it's great to be with you again. Let us know how you feel about Mitch Marner. We can go on about what you think he's worth. It really doesn't matter what I think he's worth or what you think he's worth, and you know that. It doesn't matter. We can talk about it. What matters is the number they land on that gets this kid into camp, gets this kid on the team at a good juncture of the journey, so that we're not going through the same thing that we saw happen with William Nylander, Mike.
Well, and based on the final point on this, based on what happened last year, using that as a comparative, no matter what the Leafs do, I mean, they were one of the best teams in the league last year up to December 1st, and that had no effect on the amount that Nylander ended up earning on the new deal. It wasn't like they were under less pressure and they could be more hard line against Nylander. In the end, they wanted him to come in and play because they thought they had a chance to win the Stanley Cup, and they ended up paying him almost $7 million a year. So he got prorated, got as much as David Pastrnak did. And he's not, I think most people think he's not as good as David Pastrnak. So they really capitulated on that particular situation. And you can't keep doing that. Now, Dubas may do it for one simple reason. If they get him on a 3-year deal, then they have some control over Marner with a year left before he becomes an unrestricted free agent, and then they can press for that big contract, and their cap situation may be better at that point, where they and the amount of the salary cap may go up at that point, so they would have more freedom. But you look at the here and the now, And you look at right now, they've added Muzzin, they've added Barry on defense. They have Liljegren and Sandin coming. Their defense may be at the point where it can be good enough to support their forwards. But as they lose forwards,
Yeah.
like they've traded Kadri, they may lose Nylander, then then you don't have enough offensive firepower to be able to win. So it's sort of a catch-22.
Yeah, no doubt, Mike. What are you writing right now at hockeybuzz.com? What can we focus on? What can get us amped and hyped even further than you already do for the season to come, because it's right around the corner? And I'll tell you, it feels like the fall in London, Ontario. The kids are humming. I've got a couple of hockey nets ready to go into the driveway. Hockey's coming, baby. Get us pumped up, Michael.
Well, I've been finishing up my top 25 prospects, which is what I normally do in August because the news sort of slows down. And there was a little bit of controversy in my list because I had Jeremy Bracco ranked second. And I truly believe that he's the second best prospect next to Sandin in the organization. I sort of gave away the first place one because I'll be writing that column tomorrow. But Bracco was second in the American Hockey League in scoring, and I think the only reason he's not going to be in the NHL this year is because they have Marner, Nylander, and Kapanen on the right side. That's the only thing. Any other team in the league, or most other teams in the league, after putting up the year that he did in the American Hockey League, he'd be in the top 9 on the NHL roster. But he isn't because they're deep. And I think eventually he will be, and he might be the guy that they kept around because he's a cheap salary, and if they have to trade somebody, that he would be able to step up in that role. But that's going to be the interesting thing, is to see. We know what Matthews, we know what Tavares is, we know the players on the Leafs that have been established over the last few years. It's going to be the guys like Bracco or Ilya Mikheyev or Mason Marchment who come up from the Marlies or come from the KHL and make a difference on the team this year. And that'll be the interesting thing to discover at training camp.
So your number one prospect is Brandon Convery. Where did you have Jeff Ware?
Next to Lucas Serrata.
Justin Pogge, where was he?
I don't know. I think he's in Finland right now.
And Tyler Biggs, how many Selkies has he won? He's won a couple, eh? Like he's gone from being a tough knuckle dragger to a kind of a two-way guy.
Tyler Biggs. Oh,
good Lord. Lucas Serrata.
Yes.
Jeff Ware. Rob Pearson.
Rob Pearson wasn't there. Steve Bancroft, who can go down the list of failed Leaf first-round picks.
Yeah. Okay, buddy. We'll talk soon. The Leafs combo lives on.
Thanks, Norm.